lots of things have fucked up my plans today.
Hey, poor! You don't have to be poor anymore! Jesus is here!
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, Christianity is stupid.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude near the Redneck Mecca. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuznuts is busy sitting on my drafting table giving himself a bath. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cat. Get over it. This is a special episode with my interview at ReasonCon with the wonderful Shelley Segal. And there are a couple of things that I have to go over before I get to the interview with Shelley. First and foremost is that today America got laid off from her job. I don't know any of the details yet. She just sent me a message because we were supposed to record tonight. She's like, hey, I've gotten laid off. I'm in the middle of doing stuff with HR. Can we cut that episode tomorrow? What am I going to say? Besides, what the fuck? You got laid off? Is, yes, okay. I'll be more than happy to cut the episode with you tomorrow. So, that puts a delay in when I had planned to put some things up, but I'm sure all of you can understand. And just so we're clear on this, I get, as of right now, roughly $50 a month from Patreon. I can't afford to share that with America because I need it to keep a roof over my head. And until she got laid off, America made significantly more money than I did, so it wasn't really an issue. So if you want to support her, then just pay attention. If she comes up with a GoFundMe, I will have that on the show notes page and on the Facebook page. But if you want to help her, do not up your Patreon contribution, because the way all that shit works, it'll go to me and then I have to send it to her, and it cuts into her money. It cuts into the kind of money she'd get, and I don't want that. If you're going to support her, then, if you're friends with her on Facebook, get her email address and PayPal her money. Do what you can that way. Don't use me as an intermediary, because it'll cut into everything. And I don't know how she would react to this. I haven't told her that I'm going to do this, but she has done so much for me. She has helped me a lot. She puts up with my bullshit. When I say crazy crap, she doesn't, threaten to cut my dick off because I'm the stupid bastard or whatever. So, and she really has helped me. She, when I've had the GoFundMe going because I needed the money, she was magnificent at sharing it and haranguing people to donate money. So I owe her. I have been on unemployment. I've been laid off. I know that psychologically it's bad for you. Emotionally it's bad for you, because I don't know what Arizona pays, but in Tennessee, the most you can get after taxes is around $275 a week, which is not enough to live on. And for her, where she lives, if she gets the same amount or even a bit more, it's not what she's going to need, because I know she has a car payment. She just got a new car a couple of months ago. I don't know what she pays for the rent on her apartment. She's got bills. So if you're friends with her and you can spare some money, send it to her. Please. I'm asking you. If that means you got to cut out your Patreon support for the podcast to send money to her, then I don't mind. I don't object. She deserves it. She's done a lot for me. I may be stuck eating ramen or whatever, but she deserves it. She puts up with me. She's put up with me longer than a lot of my girlfriends have, so fucking A, right? And I do what I can for the people who help me, so. And the next thing, if you are a Patreon subscriber, nothing that I have posted since not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before, have you been billed for. Because of the way Patreon system is set up, only things uploaded to Patreon can possibly hit you for a charge. So if I post something, the podcast host I use is Libsyn. If Libsyn gets it, but Patreon doesn't, you cannot be charged for it. What I do with podcasts that are going to be something other than the normal range. So, like this podcast and the podcast I posted since Sunday, I don't upload those to Patreon. I only put them on Libsyn because if I put them on Patreon, I'm liable to accidentally hit the damn button that charges you for it. I don't want to do that. The bonus episodes that are Patreon supporters only, I don't charge anybody for. So, the most you could be charged for in a month, if you're a Patreon supporter, is 5 episodes. And that would require the month to have 5 Sundays in it. On average, it'll be 4 Sundays, and because of the way things worked out this past week, or past month, if you're a Patreon supporter, you're only going to get charged for 3 episodes. That's it. There were 4 episodes that have been posted in the regular time period, but because one is a Patreon-only episode, normal, that I put out into the main feed to cover while I was at ReasonCon, I didn't charge anybody for that episode. So, again, I'm somebody who lives on the very bleeding edge of financial margins, and I understand why somebody would say, well, I can give this guy $4 a month, but no more. So I don't do things that would charge people for them outside of the regular episodes. I mean, one of my supporters is a woman who's on disability and in a wheelchair. Why she decided to spend some of her minuscule income on supporting me via Patreon, I have no idea. I'm not going to complain. And I also understand if she suddenly says, I can't do this anymore. But, because of her situation and, well, my being poor and understanding the limited range of disposable income somebody has in those situations, I am going to do my best to keep, the costs to anybody to a minimum, and the easiest way to make sure I don't accidentally charge somebody for something that I wouldn't normally do so is simply not to load it to Patreon. Because if it doesn't get loaded to Patreon, you don't get charged. Period. Paragraph. Patreon also has a setting that you can find fairly easily, which caps the maximum amount at which you shell out a month. There are a couple of podcasts I support via Patreon, and I have all the contributions to them capped so that I don't get charged for them putting out 16 episodes in a month. Not that they would do that, but there are circumstances in which they might put out an extra episode, and if they decided to charge me for it, I couldn't really handle the cost of $1 from my income disappearing. So that's what I've done. You can do that, and even though, as I said, it's not really necessary, because if the episode doesn't post when you'd expect a regular episode to post, which would be either a Sunday or a Monday, I will not charge you for it. I will not tell Patreon to charge you for it. You know, if you want to cap it to make sure that there's a hard limit, that's fine with me. I'm not at all going to complain on that subject. All right, enough of my babbling. It's late. I'm really tired. I haven't gotten much sleep since I've been back from ReasonCon, trying to deal with this shit. The audio for this episode is better than it was for the stuff I put out with Chris and I. You'll still hear some weird artifacts due to the noise reduction software that I use, but it's crystal clear. I have done very few edits on this, even though I do say a few things which make me sound kind of douchey. But the biggest edit I did was I wiped out somebody's name because I'm not sure how they would like to be mentioned on the show, if at all. They probably wouldn't object, but I don't know them. So I'm not gonna take that chance. So if you hear a weird, if you hear a weird comment without where it sounds like somebody's name should be mentioned, that's where I cut it out. Sorry, I'm tired, and I've got to do this. And I really hope I'm not boring you with all this stuff about ReasonCon, but I'm doing it, not simply because I was lucky enough to get a free ticket, thanks to Gene Elliott, who liked something I posted and said, I'll give you a free ticket if you let me repost this. But because I really want to get people showing up these things. It is a hell of a lot of fun. If you've seen the photos I posted on the show's page on Facebook, you'll know that there was just a shit ton of people. So, anyways, here now is my interview with Shelley, and I won't be able to get that the discussion with America up tomorrow. It'll be Friday at the earliest, maybe Saturday, and I will talk to you then with potentially more surprises. And I am here at ReasonCon with the lovely and hugely talented Shelley Segal. She just stuck her tongue out at me. But no, she really is, and she has been kind enough to give me a few minutes to talk, so I figure I would like to.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Tucker. It's nice to talk to you again.
My pleasure. Okay, the first thing, because apparently a lot of people don't know this, you have somehow, I guess you were hit on the head and you decided you wanted to live in the States.
Yes, I moved to Los Angeles, which I've now learned to say correctly. So I was saying Los Angeles for ages. Everyone was giving me dirty looks. I live in Los Angeles, and look, I'm happy to be here. I moved here before the election, and to be honest, I did not see that coming, but
you and 40 bunch of millions of Americans didn't see it coming either.
And look, it's disappointing, but I think that's not going to make me leave. I wanted to be here. And it's funny, sometimes I go on tour in certain states, particularly in the South, and you hear some of the stories from the secular movement of what people are going through, what they're having to deal with, their kids being indoctrinated with religion at school, they're having to deal with discrimination at work based on their religious beliefs and all these kinds of prejudices and discriminations that they have to deal with in their everyday life. And I just think, how do you stay here? Why are you staying here? I would be in a rage constantly. But people say, well, we have to stay because if we leave, then they win. We have to stay and fight. And I always, saw that from an outside perspective. But I kind of feel that way a bit now after being here through the election and spending the majority of my last 4 years, or at least half of that time, in the US. I feel a real affinity, particularly for the secular community that I've spent time with, but just for the people here as a whole. And I'd like to stay and fight too. I think I've said it at a show recently, I think America is about to make some really great art in response. I mean, there has to be a response. And I know you guys get a lot of flack for your reputation around the rest of the world because of politics and often a lot of the policies, foreign policies and internal national policies. But I think everybody I've met is a wonderful person that does want their society to be better, and especially in the secular world and the activist world, people are pushing for that really hard every day. So I'm excited to be here and be part of that.
Yeah, well, and no offense, but I think we have gay marriage in Australia, doesn't?
Yeah. No offense taken, you guys. That's another conversation I have really often with people because they think that Australia is so much more progressive than the States, and we're not in a lot of ways. I mean, certain ways where we have socialized medicines, healthcare, and support for students to go to college and stuff like that. But yeah, we don't have marriage equality. We don't have legalized marijuana, even medicinal marijuana.
I thought Capital City had.
The ACT, I think, but I think it's still very strict about who it's for, and that is a very small region of Australia.
Not Capital City, Townsville.
I think, isn't it the Australian Capital Territory? Is it?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It could be Townsville. I'm totally wrong. I don't live in those places, so.
No, but when I hear Townsville, I think of the Powerpuff Girls. So what's it like being in the Powerpuff? No, I'm just kidding. But that's the thing that pops into my head is, Townsville, Powerpuff Girls. And then I find out, wait, the fucking Australians actually have a city called Townsville. Oh
my God. I used to have Blossom socks. They were cool.
I've called a number of my female friends that I am fond of. I call Bubbles because of the Powerpuff Girls, and most of them are not happy about that for some reason. But it's Powerpuff. I mean, it's all positive, feminine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bubbles has got, I don't know, some kind of connotation. But,
that's true. So, you're here at ReasonCon. Of course, it's almost over. I gotta say, saw your performance, and the song that you did about that you wrote about the relationship that you had with the boyfriend that your father said, you can't date him, he's not Jewish.
Yeah.
That really touched me because I've been in this is one of those things. It's like, for some reason, like, I'll date a girl and I'll try to be the most honorable guy in the world. Whether or not I live up to it is another matter, but it's like I try to be, and their parents are always like, "You're some kind of dirtbag," and so that really impacted me, because it's like, if you screw around in that, you're really screwing around in a lot of people's emotions and things like that, and
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So, are you still in contact with him, or not that you necessarily would have a relationship, but are you still friends or anything like
with
that?
With my dad or that partner?
That partner.
That partner actually is. So I was 18, and he was my first boyfriend. We started dating when we were 17, and like I said at the show, my father told me that we needed to break up because he wasn't Jewish, and I was heartbroken. And actually, I was still religious at the time, and it was a big part of my life, my Judaism, and so I felt this unbelievable tension between these two worlds, and like family and tradition and religious values, and the deity that I believed in then, or my personal God, was pretty happy for me to be having a good time and a loving intimate relationship.
Okay, I have to ask, Christians have a personal Jesus. What do Jews have? Do they have a personal Jehovah?
Yeah, I did. I had a personal God, and he, I could talk to him. I did. I talked to him most nights, and I prayed every night, and I would compose little songs of, look after my uncle and my grandpa and my friend Marina, and, I had, a really close relationship, I believed then. Now I say it with myself. And I remember going, and we went to synagogue every week, and I would wait so we had the service in the hall, this beautiful old hall, and then everyone would go into the back room to have a meal and a toast and kiddush, as we call it, and I would wait till they were all gone, and then it was the best time because I had this whole hall of God's house just to myself, and I could talk to him, and I would turn the lights up. Oh, well, you couldn't touch the lights, but I would go into the dark corners of it and dance around on my own and just have this awesome, beautiful space, and sit in front of the Arona Kodesh, like the holiest place in the room where the Old Testament scrolls are kept, and it was such a sacred space to me, and I really took it all seriously and to heart very deeply. And so again, like that tension between two parts of my life that I really valued and cared for deeply was incredibly painful. It was like one of the hardest times in my life, and caused a really big rift between me and my dad, who was also, one of my best friends. And but that really ruined my relationship with my partner then, Adam. I think it was really hard for him to not be accepted, and it caused a lot of tension. But he is my best friend. 10 years later, 12 years later, we're very, very close friends. So
let me ask you, if he had converted to Judaism, would your dad have accepted it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, actually, my dad's a picky bastard, but I think that would have, that's what he would want, I guess. That would say to him, and that would express to him what he's probably looking for, which is, I'm serious and I'm prepared to do anything to be with you, or whatever he wanted out of it. It does send this message that he wanted, but I explained to my dad, I don't give a shit what you want. This is my it's my partner. I have to go to wake up and go to sleep with him. It's not about that. But so that song, I'm really glad that resonated with you. I'm sorry that you experienced that situation, but I think it's very common. Yeah. And so that song is going to be my next single, and I actually just shot the video clip for it in Australia about 2 weeks ago, and I'm really excited to see it. I think it's going to be really powerful. I hope so. You never know till you get the clip back. But I'm really, it's funny, like, it's not so much from an atheist perspective. It's going back to that young girl that loved the synagogue, that, felt that tension between those two worlds. And, there's a scene of me, kind of being separated from my partner and looking at one side, looking at my partner, and then looking back at the synagogue, and, kind of showing that tension. And I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
I hope so. Sorry, I tend to stutter, and I've had way more than this. But no, that really touched me because, like I said, I've been in situations where it's like, I try to be, and of course, when I say try to be respectful, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to actually have sex with your daughter because, her virginity is a commodity. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how many fucked up parts of that go through.
Yeah.
That was a really hard thing too, because my dad always treated me like total equal and like really respected my opinions and thoughts on everything matters with my own life and trajectory of my own life, but also on just worldly matters. He always treated me with respect and gave me the confidence to follow my own convictions and have opinions. And so then to kind of become a mature adult woman and start to face pushback in that area of my life, in like my personal private life and my sexuality, that was like really confronting and hurtful, because it's like, well, why all of a sudden am I unable to, am I not that trustworthy, intelligent of a person? Like, obviously, young people need guidance through that particularly, interesting and difficult time, but you need education. I believe education and tools to navigate it, rather than just abstinence only or being shut down or undermined in your autonomy.
Yeah. I don't know if they're in Australia, but I'm sure you've heard about them in the States, the Amish.
Yes.
Okay. Strange thing. The Amish are actually more open about sexuality than a lot of other religions. They have, it's called Rumspringa.
Yeah.
When the kid hits...
Spring break.
but it lasts for like 4 years or something like that.
Yeah, wow.
When they hit 16, they pull the kid out of school and they say, until you turn 21, you can do whatever you want. And they have overnight dates. And they admit that, yes, we know that these kids are going to have sex and they may not wind up being married. And they're okay with that, which is, despite the fact that they don't like anything that was invented after 1850, that's surprisingly progressive.
Yeah. I think much more realistic.
Yeah. So, and I know very little about Judaism, but I'm kind of surprised that they have the similar restraints on it, because I know in Christianity, if you fail, you can always go, "Oh, Jabez, forgive me."
Yeah.
But
you can't get the forgiveness. Yeah, I think it depends on the community and the particular strain of Judaism that you're infected with. But marriage, sex before marriage is a huge deal. But a bigger deal, I think, is marrying within the community, and that's tied into what I would call the core belief, which is in the Jewish identity. So much of the religion has become about perpetuating Judaism and Jewish values internally. It's not a proselytizing religion, so we don't go out and get people to join, so it's never going to grow in numbers. The only way to keep it going is to keep inbreeding, to keep marrying within the community. They call it marrying out. If you marry out, it's like the worst thing you can do. Even my friends who grew up with no religiosity, no religious observance whatsoever, who they ate bacon and pork, like they didn't care, they didn't know anything about the festivals or like the customs, just the bare minimum, and they would still say, "Oh, of course I'm going to marry a Jew. Of course." That's like the one thing that they will do, and that's a powerful indoctrination. Even that was the last thing that I had to let go of. Like, I didn't believe in God, I didn't believe in any of it, but I'm Jewish, and I knew it, and it was important. Now I realize that was just another tenet of my religion. I'm still able to say, well, I was raised in a Jewish family, in a Jewish ethnicity, and I identify with certain elements of that culture. It's, inextricable from my psyche, but at the same time, that is not the most important part of my identity. I don't feel the same way about it as I did then, and as I see a lot of my friends, even secular Jews, still carrying.
Yeah. Well, and I know a lot of non-Jewish people don't realize that Judaism is both an ethnicity and a religion, even though that you can have people who are not Semitic who are Jews.
Well, it's quite strange because it has all of these tenets of an ethnicity, like shared geographical history, or that's one of the possible elements of it. Shared culture, shared gene pool. Obviously, I mean there are diseases that are specific to Ashkenazi Jews, and so we have all these elements of an ethnicity, but at the same time, you can just opt in. You can convert to Judaism no matter what your geographical or, genetic lineage is, and you are Jewish, and then you're part of that ethnicity. According to the Jews, if you convert to Judaism, it means you had a Jewish soul all along, conveniently. And so, I think it's interesting, and that's part of why I think that part of ethnicity has to be, self-identification, because it's pretty hard to define without that.
And ethnicity is really squirrely when you start, because I know people. I used to work with a woman who you would consider white, but she was born and raised in South Africa, and she moved to the U.S. because when she was 17, her father transferred here for a job. And it's like, well, technically she can call herself an African American, even though she is nowhere near what anybody would picture when you say African American.
And even then, like if you have, one grandparent that has one particular ethnical background that you identify the most strongly with, who's to say which one of the myriad of your lines is the one that you focus on and call the most important?
And if my understanding is correct, if your mother is a Jew, you're considered Jewish, whether or not you practice. But if your father is a Jew and your mother is anything,
as they would call it,
you're not considered Jewish.
That's true. And again, that depends on the type of Judaism.
Yeah.
Because Reform Judaism accepts, if through the father. But and this is something that comes up in that discussion often, is that in Germany, in Hitler's Germany, if you had one grandparent that was Jewish, no matter what gender,
or even a great grandparent,
then you had that blood in you, and you were taken away. So it's interesting that you wouldn't be considered Jewish by your own community. You could be ostracized by your own community, despite wanting to be part of or feeling affiliated and an affinity for it. But
in the American South, they have, or had, I should say, they officially have gotten beyond it, but not really. They have the one-drop rule, which was if any of your ancestors were black, you're still considered black no matter what you look like, which is insane. And you get into the issue where it's like, well, there's people. The TV series Prison Break, I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I haven't watched it, but I've heard of it.
The lead actor is... He's black, but he doesn't look it. And he... For whatever reason, he should be considered black under the one-drop rule, but you look at him and it's like, he looks like a white guy, but it's like, really, why should it matter what ethnicity he is? Yeah. But we're all tied into this, and the French, until fairly recently, didn't differentiate about people who were of different ethnic backgrounds, their attitude was, well, if you're a French citizen, you're French, and then after all these people who were descendants of Algerians who were French citizens but couldn't get employed because their skin color was a little different, rioted, they realized, guys, we need to take this into account.
Yeah.
And it's just insane.
It's a pretty interesting time for, I think, discussions about race or ethnicity and identity politics. Yeah. And there's certain pros and cons for, seeing the world in that way. And
I mean, my oldest brother looks like a chimp. He's white, but he looks like a chimp. I mean, you look at him, he looks like a chimp. But if we were African American, you couldn't say that about him, even though, the only difference between how he looks now and how he'd look as an African American is the skin tone. It's just weird. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but you get what I'm saying. I mean, we have real issues and we don't have the language to deal with them.
Yeah. I think the best way to create that is through conversation and dialogue, which is scary because you don't want to offend someone or say the wrong thing, or
and
or further, I guess, or further perpetuate certain problems. But I think dialogue and listening and finding new voices is a really cool way to have that dialogue, and I think the internet really affords us that.
And music really helps, because one thing is the last sense when you're dying to go is your hearing. Your brain is wired up so that as everything shuts down, you lose the hearing right before you die. And the other thing, I've heard that from people who are trained professionals in the medical industry, so I trust it. And the other thing is that music is really deeply hardwired in human beings.
Yes, absolutely. Has so much cultural information in it.
Oliver Sacks, I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah,
he did one of his last books. He was dealing with music and the impacts on the brain, and there are certain people who are genetically, they have a defect where they can't enjoy music, but he pointed out that in the people who can enjoy music, it hits us in ways that nothing else does.
Yeah. I've always felt like that it's too good to be true. How could there be this miraculous thing that makes us feel so great? I remember the first time I kind of told anyone that I was an atheist. The first time I really kind of acknowledged it within myself as well was when someone asked me if I believed in God. And I'd been questioning for a long period. And I said, no, music is my religion. That was the first way that I thought about it.
So I think I asked you this the last time you were on, but what was it that tipped you over the edge?
It was a lot of things.
It is with everybody, but
I guess it started with learning about evolution in biology class, which I only took because I love animals and I think they're cute, so I wanted to.
Despite the fact that everything in Australia will fucking kill you.
It says that, but you guys have bears. We don't have bears. We don't have any large land mammals that will, predators.
You have giant goddamn spiders.
Mountain lions.
What is it, the huntsman spider?
They don't bite you.
The fucking and somebody posted a picture in a group I'm in, and the thing is like eating half the fucking door in their closet, and they're like, it's just one of them things that we have here in Australia. And then,
well, look, if it makes me seem tough, then I'll take it. I'm not scared of huntsman spiders.
Okay, how about monitor lizards?
I'm not familiar with them.
They're there. The co-host on some of my episodes is an African American woman, and somebody posted a photo from Australia of this monitor lizard, not a Komodo dragon size, but this thing was a good 10 feet, and it was like somebody had a brick house and they had a sliding glass door, and this thing was on the wall at the top of the sliding glass door, and this, the head was at the top of the door and the tail was all the way at the bottom. So you're figuring this thing is a good 6 feet. She's like, "Fuck you! It's a little goddamn dinosaur."
I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen a snake at home, except a pet snake. I just, I think people have this image of Australia that is just totally brought to them by Crocodile Dundee or some kind of weird YouTube videos. It's like the same as any city.
I will say
much
that
wildlife.
you are more at risk of being shot in America than you are of dying from any poisonous thing in Australia.
And absolutely, there's not one person that has died from a spider bite in Australia since the 80s.
Yeah, because you all are super good on the anti-venom stuff. In fact, you have been so good at it, you're like, we're like really running short of the vaccine, the stuff we need, and we're desperate for help on that. Because something, I forget what the details were, but there was something that they were seeking the Australian public, find these things so we can make the anti-venom, because we don't want anybody to die, and it's been so rare that we've run out of all the other stocks and all that.
Yeah, wow.
But no, it's for somebody like us, it's a shock. But you've got kangaroos that beat the shit out of people, and
who the fuck is gonna go up to a kangaroo and start making friends? Just stay away. They're not gonna chase you.
Well, you have seen the video of the guy punching the kangaroo that was attacking his dog.
How did they get? I haven't seen that. But how did they get? And again, I'm sure the dog approached the kangaroo.
I don't remember because it's like a 10-second clip, and there's like the kangaroo and the dog, and all of a sudden there's
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Obviously
it could be some rogue aggressive.
Yeah.
Kind of
it could be a male defending his territory, or it could be a female protecting her young and just seeing the dog. And the dude's like anybody with a pet that they love. He's like, you ain't gonna fuck with my pet. So he comes up and clocks it's like the most Australian thing ever, because he just clocks the kangaroo and then runs off, or hops off, I should say. Okay. I know the story, sort of. Hopefully you can explain it better than me. Kangaroo, the word kangaroo is not really an Aboriginal word, right?
I'm really not sure where the word comes from.
Because there's like an urban legend that it means, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, white boy. and that somehow but we'll skip that then.
Sorry, I couldn't shed.
No, that's fine. That cantor song, is that the right term that you did?
Yeah.
That was really beautiful, and you said it was something that your father would sing at the synagogue. Can you elucidate for folks like us who...
Sure. So last night at the show, I performed a song that my father sings in the synagogue, and it's a song about the Torah, the Old Testament.
Right.
And the whole service in the synagogue was revolving around the Old Testament, the reading of the Old Testament. They bring it out each week. They read a paragraph. They read a paragraph each week until they get to the end, and then they have a big celebration, and they start again. So it's the whole service is revolving around that. And then each time when they finish reading it, they fold up they roll up the scrolls. They put on this beautiful adornment and velvet casing and gold crowns, and it's just like such this elevated kind of item. And then they open up the Aron HaKodesh I was saying before, that holiest place in the synagogue. We all have to face that.
The Aron HaKodesh?
No, the Aron HaKodesh is like the holiest place. I was telling you about it before, where they keep the scrolls. Right. And so then they open up this beautiful ornate curtain, and then they put the scrolls back in, and then just before they close it, my father sings this song, and it's Chaim, the tree of life, and it's talking about how the Torah and the Word of God is the root of knowledge and wisdom and all of these great things, which it's funny because I don't it doesn't resonate with me anymore. I actually find the book to be quite abhorrent and,
Really? Why?
inexcusable, really. Inexcusable and evil and perpetuating, like, harm and murder and hatred every day. So I hate it. But that song is so beautiful, the melodies are just stunning. Like, I love the old Jewish liturgical melodies, liturgical, I'm not sure what that word is. Either one of those. I love the melodies. They're really beautiful and they're really haunting and moving. And so, in a way, I feel like it's cool. I can co-opt that and use it for my own purposes and my own voice. And I like singing this, like, really traditional song at pubs and clubs and bars when I'm doing shows and incorporating into a set. It's really
No. I mean, honestly, one of my favorite songs is Amazing Grace, provided it's done with bagpipes.
Yeah.
And I mean, so, like, I watched the end of the Wrath of Khan, and of course they fire Spock out in the tube, and I'm like, because they play Amazing Grace. So I understand that fully, that there's an emotional connection, even if you realize that the lyrics are bullshit.
And that's that even can add to the emotional connection, because it's the change, you're a change of consciousness and that you've gone through, and that change and development that you've had through your whole life. Again, against that song, just instead of taking away from it, actually adding layers to the emotional connection. Music's so cool like that. Like, it just, as you have more and more experiences, it just adds to the depth of the meaning. Yeah.
So, I was wanting to ask you about this, because hearing, that song, your background as far as your educational post high school, did you study music here in college? Okay.
Yeah, I did. I did a Bachelor of Applied Music.
Okay. So, because there are a lot of similarities between that cantor, and at least to my fucking ears, and Islamic, songs where they do the tonal, where they bring the voice up and they let it fall and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you know if any of the connections between that, or is that not out of your area?
Yeah, that's out of my area. I'm not sure. I mean, I know that all the Abrahamic traditions borrowed plenty from each other. So
well, and that, I mean, in Islam and Judaism were all in the same neighborhood, so it's not surprising that they would have influenced one another.
And they're focused on reading from the book, right? So I assume there's something similar in the in the readings, but I think a lot of that as well has to do with what kind of acoustics we were limited to at the time when when these religions and prayer services were created, and it's all about voices carrying in the big
because there were, at least in Europe, a lot of the medieval cathedrals were designed, to use acoustic things. Their structures were built so that, because they didn't have electronic amplification, they built them so that they could amplify the sounds naturally.
Yeah. The melodies do feel familiar.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Hildegard von Bingen?
No.
She was 12th, 13th century. She was a nun she wrote a lot of music that has, you hear it and it does sound, it has that forgive my musical ineptitude, but it does have the rising and the falling of the vocals, like that cantor you sang, or a lot of other things. And she was a 12th, 13th century abbess who one of those things, she got routed into the nunnery when she was like 4 and then raised. And after she got kicked in the head by a horse, she had visions and all that. She did, but her music is really beautiful, and she wrote it in Latin. And
yeah, cool.
But it's.
I'll check it out.
So it was just curious because it all kind of falls in that area. Not that it's not necessarily something you want to perform.
That was the birth of like our Western musical system. In those rooms.
Yeah.
I should really go because I've left.
And we've been talking for over half an hour, and I can bullshit around the rest of it. I really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Thanks. It's nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, and nice to meet you in the flesh for once. And I'm sorry, I'm a guy who doesn't have a car. So when you were in Nashville,
well, like next time.
Yeah. So where did you play when you were in Nashville?
I can't remember the name of the place now. That's so shocking. Something Taps, Belmont Taps.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. And hang on, let me get this closer to you since you're standing.
Sorry. Yeah, Belmont Taps.
Where are you going to be?
I'm going to be back like August or September. I'm not sure, but maybe the same place.
Yeah,
maybe
but between, I know you said you're taking the next month off to concentrate on the business in LA. Where are you going to be in like June and July?
June, I'm going to be in New York. I'll be doing some shows and also attending some music conferences. I think first weekend of July, I'm going to be in Vegas for an event with the Center for Science and Wonder. I haven't really confirmed that yet, but in case we don't get another chance to talk about it. And then in July, I'm also going to do a tour of England, and I'm going to be performing at the Segal conference in London with Mariam. And then I get back and then go on the road. So really not enough time in LA.
Yeah,
as usual.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. I thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, Tucker.
Thank you.
I better get back. I just left Rob on his phone, so I'll see you in Nashville.
Yeah.
Alright, cool. Thanks a lot, and I'll look forward to hearing it when it's
okay.
That's it for this episode of The Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, as well as just about anywhere else podcasts can be found. Many of the episodes are also on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter. @TParkAtheist is the show's Twitter handle. It's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fosnuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.